welcome to our Inside the Sales segment this week. We had a special guest in the house, Mara Mignaga. How we doing, Mara?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Did I say that right again?
Yes.
I'm 2 for 2. And if you've not checked out the True Talk with Mara, please do that. It's a great conversation about Mara's journey here. But today we're going to talk about sales. And why is Mara sitting in the seat today? What I love about this company, Mara, is we don't let people train if they don't know what they're doing, right? I'm sure maybe you have worked somewhere where the manager shouldn't have been the manager, right? and that we don't allow that to happen here. It's like, well, like myself, for example, I haven't sold in probably 5 or 6 years. I'm not going to sit here and tell you how to sell life insurance today because I don't do it anymore. I've never done virtual. I've never done telesales. I was old school, stack of applications in my bag, and I was knocking on your door. So that's why we have you here. Mara's currently, I know you're in the top 5. You have placed in force over $800,000 in premium this year, helped over 800 families, and you were Hall of Fame last year, already Hall of Fame this year, and you've not even been with us 2 years. So my point is you're qualified to talk about sales, with us at least. But one of the things I want to talk about today is you're doing all telesales, right?
Yes.
And is that mostly term, mostly final expense?
I do a mix of both. I like to kind of stay fresh with both, but I have gravitated towards term.
Term more, so do more mortgage protection. But what I want to talk about, so one thing, as much as I said, hey, I'm not going to train you on how to sell, I do believe that a lot of the core principles of sales have not changed. It's like when I hear you guys talk about stuff, I'm like, that's the same thing we used to do, 8, 9, 10 years ago. But I've always looked at the clients like in thirds, right? If you meet with 10 to 12 clients, I think there's a third of that group that will statistically buy a policy no matter what happens. They just want to buy life insurance, right? I mean, and again, we're lead-based, so they're filling out a form. Mm-hmm. I think that you can go in there on your first day knowing nothing and help that family. I think you could send someone out who can't speak and help those families, that small group, right? Then I believe there's a third that are probably just not going to buy, right? I mean, you've met with people where it's just, it's a no-go.
Yeah.
And the magic in that as an agent is learning when to cut bait. Because I think we've all been there. I remember early on, Mara sitting in, an appointment for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and I didn't walk out with a sale. I didn't help that family. And honestly, I knew within the first few minutes it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
My own stupidity, stubbornness, however you want to look at it. But so it's learning when to just go, you know what? You're not serious about this. I got 20 more clients to meet. Have a nice day and move on.
Yeah.
But then there's that other third where these people, I feel like, need to be brought back to that emotional state they were at when they inquired about life insurance, right? Because we're all lead-based, so someone either filled out a direct mail lead, did something online, but everyone you're talking to has initiated contact about life insurance. And I believe that that's an emotional decision. Mm-hmm. I don't think people think logically when it comes to life insurance. If they did, everyone would have it. Mm-hmm. Everybody would have it because we're all going to die, spoiler alert. And, when none of us got out of here alive, a guy told me a long time, I was like, that makes sense. So logically, everyone would have it. That's not what happens. It's usually an emotional thing, right? Someone in the family passed away, a friend, someone got sick. I mean, how many times, I'm sure this still happens, where do you meet, it's usually us men, where I went to my doctor and I have high blood pressure and now I need to get life insurance. They get like all freaked out, right? So it's usually something. And I think that other group, that other third, that's where you become a profitable agent. That's where you become good at sales. That could be the determining factor of whether you stay in this business and succeed or quit and don't, because you have to learn how to take those people from here to here, right? Mm-hmm. Which you've been really good at. So I'd love to talk about that for a little bit. And if you wanted to go through a little bit of your presentation to kind of let us know how you get to that point, that's great. But actually, let's do that. I want you to kind of run me through your presentation. We don't have to role play, but just kind of give me high level, here's what I do, and then we'll talk about how to take that group from A to B.
Okay. Yeah, I would say, honestly, everything comes down to the conversation you're having with the client. I feel like you really set the tone with what you say first.
Yeah.
It definitely is everyone filling out this information. Their interest was piqued at some point.
Right.
And, that group of people that, is kind of on the fence about it, I think they're on the fence because they just need to be reminded why.
Right.
And I feel like I set the structure very well at the beginning of my presentation because I start all of my presentations the same. I just introduce myself. I say what I do. I let them know, my extent of how many companies I work with, I'm definitely a good person to be talking to. I have access to X, Y, and Z companies. So if there's something that makes sense for you, we're going to find it. And then I just ask questions. I kind of start with getting to know them, getting to know their why. And if they don't know, they usually figure it out when you ask them that question, like kind of have them self-reflect a little bit on, why they fill this out in the first place. Like, what are you looking for? What are you trying to cover? Who is this going to benefit? And then, I go through some medical with them and just have them talk about themselves a lot. And that kind of guides me into knowing, okay, this is why it's important to you and this is what you need. And I kind of play off of that. So I do feel like a lot of that group of people that they're unsure, they kind of start to remind themselves why they filled this out when they start speaking about what prompted them to fill it out in the first place.
Right.
Like you said, there are people that, they sit down and they just know, this is what I need. I got to do it. Let's get it done.
Right.
And there are people that, they're not going to buy anything. He's like, I don't know why you filled it out.
Right.
They don't know what's going on. They just want to argue the whole time.
Yep.
It's like they got to convince you why they don't need it.
Exactly.
And there are people like that. You're just not going to get everybody.
Yeah.
But I do think a fair amount of people, you just have to have that conversation with them because they know they need it, but they're apprehensive. They don't know how it works. They don't know how it's going to fit into their budget. They don't like to think about death in general.
Right.
And that's the main thing is they just don't do it because they don't want to think about it. And it's like some people I've, heard them say, it's almost like they think it's bad luck to start talking about, like they think something's going to happen.
Right. I start talking about I'm going to die tomorrow.
And they're like, I'm not ready to die. So I'm not going to do this. We're not going to do it. And I think, like I said, just my presentation I have in general, just kind of having them self-reflect, answer questions, it kind of lets me know what I need to know about the person to move forward and how I'm going to move forward. And I think it's like puts it fresh in their mind of, this is why I did that, and why this needs to be put in place for me.
Got it. And I think, one of the things that you mentioned or were you talking about asking them questions about why they filled it out, and they were very pointed questions, like who are you trying to protect or what are you trying versus why'd you fill out this form?
Right.
You do that, you might as well just pack up and leave that. Because they're going to, what are they going to say? I just wanted information. So very pointed questions to then lead to the next step. But I like how you said, you're basically getting the information from them and getting them to verbalize it again brings them back to that moment, right?
Yes.
It's one thing for you to go, oh, you fill this out to take care of your, daughter. No, let them say that. Let them tell you why. And then, so that group, so let's talk about that now. So you've got the information, right? And that still doesn't mean that they're going to buy, right? You still have to put – and there's going to be some instances where you may have to use that information. I hate to say it this way, use it against them in a way. Right? Like you gave me this ammo, now I got to use it on you.
Right.
Talk to me about that. So how are you then, when you do get the pushback? Because I'm sure you get it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's like a misconception with a lot of newer agents or agents that are not selling at the level that they want. They look at, your numbers, people like Steve, people like East, and all these guys, they look at them and go, they just must not deal with the rejection that I get, right? Mm-hmm. They must not get the objections and all these things. And it's like, they're the same leads.
Yeah.
Right? Like same clients, so you're getting them. But talk to me a little bit about when you do get that apprehension, so you asked me a bunch of questions, and I go, no, that's great, Mara, but I really need to think about this. I'll get back to you. Is this a good number to read? So what in those type of situations, what are you then doing with the information that they gave you?
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things I've learned is I need to think about it, or rebuttals in general isn't no. It's just I'm unsure, and it's usually I need more information. I don't feel like you properly explained everything to make me feel comfortable to do this right now today. So I usually almost kind of ignore that when they say that. And I'm like, okay, like what is it that you're unsure about? Not, let's reschedule X, Y, Z.
Right.
What is it that you're apprehensive about? And then we just kind of touch on like, okay, like we're here today. We have our appointment today. It's something where the longer you wait, the longer you put it off. And it's more so just kind of having them, again, tell me what it is that is concerning them. And kind of fine-tuning on what is your concern, and let's go over that specifically.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's huge, because the worst mistake you can make is reacting, right? If they go, I'm just not going to do this today, I'll get back to you, and then, well, why not? Well, what if you die? Like, you start doing panic mode. you're never going to help that family.
Yeah.
And I mean, it is exactly what you said is key. It's like, just ignore it almost. Act like it's just part of like, okay, and next. But it's almost that mental switch. 'Cause I like how you said that when they say that, I'm not taking it as a no. I think a lot of agents early on make that mistake and they take that as a no. They take one subtle objection, rebuttal, whatever you want to call it, as a flat out no. And you're right, it's not. It's usually, how Sean would always say it to us, and different time, different day, but it would be like, dude, that's on you. Like we used to, agent would come out of the house and I didn't help the client and it was just a client. And go, well, hold on. Let's think about, let's put some perspective on this. And then back in the day, it was all direct mail leads, right? So we mailed out whatever it was, 1 million letters a week, 1% would fill them out. So first of all, you're getting 1% of the people, they got this letter, they decided to open it. How many people just threw it out?
Right.
How many people leave it on their table, right? Never fill it out. How many people fill it out, put it in the envelope, but don't send it back, right? So first of all, they sent it back. Then you called them. They answered. They booked an appointment with you, and they were there. We're talking like 7 steps that person took to even get there.
Right.
And then we introduce you. And now they're not interested in life insurance anymore. I go, well, what changed? Was it them or you? And I think that in order to get better in this business and grow early on, you have to accept the responsibility for everything that happens. You have to go, if I helped 10 families today, I did that. If I helped 0 families today, that was my fault. Right? Did you learn that early on? When did you start, taking accountability for everything that happened in the field?
Yeah, I think it was something you pick it up very quickly,
Yeah.
Just going through your first couple conversations, because every conversation is different. I would say, I have found myself just, what could I have done better in that situation?
Yeah.
Like, what did I not explain well enough to them? I just think for families, a lot of it is just ignorance in the sense of they don't understand the product.
Right.
They don't understand, fully why they need it, what it's going to do, and they don't see the long picture, or the long-term picture rather.
Mm-hmm.
So I think accountability is definitely important for sure. It's just, think about how you could have explained things better. And I think I've gotten very good at that is, I've had clients tell me like, this is the easiest conversation I've ever had with an insurance agent. You can't be too salesy. Like, people don't want to feel sold. It's more so just like an educated conversation. And I think it just comes down to making things as simple and as painless as possible while being informative and professional. And I think that is definitely something I picked up very early on.
Yeah. Now, I've never done telesales. I've done in-home. And for me, sitting face-to-face across the table, I can pick up on a lot of body language cues. Like, I can tell if you're into what I'm saying, if you're not, if you agree. Over the phone, that's a lot harder. You obviously can't see them, right? So what are some cues? Like, how do you pick up? Because obviously with how much you sell, you figure that piece out.
Yeah.
So when the client is apprehensive, when they're unsure, what are some signs on the phone that you're able to pick up on, and how do you manage those?
I would say the biggest thing is tonality, like how they're responding, the sense of what they're saying, like how much of an answer are they giving you? Is it just yes or no, or are they being like inquisitive? Are they asking questions? I can usually tell within the first 2 minutes on the phone if I'm going to have a shot at closing it or not, just based on their demeanor of how they speak.
Yeah.
I've definitely gotten better at making them become interested by, building some rapport with them and things. But I think the main thing is you just have to listen to how they're answering your questions, and if they sound engaged in the conversation, because you can't see them.
Right.
But I think body language does correspond right back to tonality and how people are speaking, for sure.
Yeah. Got it. Anything else on kind of moving them over that edge, right? So, they're giving you these rebuttals. You're just taking it as there's not enough information that I've given, right? So once you've identified that, you've asked this question, right? You're asking it. What is usually their response when you go, what are you apprehensive about? Or
usually the main things are going to be, I don't know if it fits in my budget.
Yeah.
I already have some type of coverage in place. Sometimes people start to realize like, oh, I do have some type of life insurance in place. Maybe like they try to make it work with what they already have. something of that nature. I mean, it's a lot of different things,
Yeah.
but the main thing is usually some type of budget or honestly just do I need it? Is it important? You know, like, can I live without it?
Yeah.
And I think those are the main things where you can kind of knock those rebuttals out
Right.
at the beginning just by being informative, inquisitive, and, you know, making those direct questions and answering
Yeah.
based on what you can tell what their concerns are.
Yeah, because honestly, the key is to not have to go through those rebuttals or objections, remove them prior to, right? You
Yes.
don't want to get into this, you know, back and forth of, you know, like it's never going to, because you're going to get into an argument eventually, right? And I think that, you know, one of the biggest questions for new agents usually is that, like, train on your rebuttals. What do you say when they, and because we're always looking at it from the wrong perspective.
Yeah.
It's not, let's get to the fight and how do we win the fight. Let's avoid the fight altogether.
Right.
On the phone, what are you doing to remove those objections on the front end?
I would say it would be the questions I'm asking,
Yeah.
like the targeted, you know, why did you fill this out? What are you looking for? You know, like, just, I think being very informative at the very beginning before we even get into numbers or anything like that is.
Do you explain the whole process prior to what's going to happen?
Yes.
Yep.
I before I give anybody any numbers, I'm going over medical. Why did you fill this out?
Yeah.
Why is it important to you? So I would say the biggest chunk of my presentation is before we even go over the numbers.
Got it. How long is your phone call on average if it's a family you're helping?
I've been able to knock out a full presentation and application within 20 to 25 minutes.
Okay. Got
So
it.
it's I've gotten it down to like a science at
Got
this
it.
point.
What was it in the beginning?
Probably like 45 minutes.
45. So you cut almost in half.
Yes.
Yeah. Got it. But you're still doing a lot of this on the front end. So how much time are you spending discussing what's happening before you even move into the application?
I pretty much do all of my, you know, and asking all my questions. What kind of coverage are you looking for? Rapport building all at the beginning. So
Yeah.
I would say the first 15 minutes is figuring out what you need and why you need it, and the last 10 minutes is just zipping through the application.
Got it. Is there a sign that you're looking for to know that it's time to move on to the application? Or is it just when you've explained everything you explained? Is it a cue you get from them where you know, okay, now they're ready?
Yeah, I feel like you can kind of tell once you've explained to them, you know, this is what I think you should, you know, I always give them recommendations. I don't ask them how much coverage they want. They tell me what they need. And I'm like, this is what I think we should do.
Yeah.
You know, based on that, do you want to hear something more or less? Like, I kind of, once I get the agreement on this would work for my budget and this is the amount of coverage that would be comfortable, I just jump into the
Got
application.
it. So you're getting that kind of, as some people, soft close, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And you're offering the option. You're not going, hey, there's these three options. Which one's best? You're listening to what they're telling you and then going, all right, this is what I would suggest.
Yes.
Yeah. How many times is, you know, what you suggest what they go with? How many times you need to kind of backtrack and do something else?
Most of the time they're going to take my recommendation unless it's not affordable.
Got it.
I would say that's one of my biggest tips is I do not pitch three options to people.
Okay.
I think that is the biggest rebuttal right there is you just gave them way too much to think about. I need to go over all these numbers and see which one works best. I don't do that because I think it knocks most of the rebuttals right out of the way there of you just told me this is what you have, this is what we're working with. I think you should do this. Does that make sense or do we need to adjust from there? And then they tell me that's not reasonable. Okay, so let's look at this now. Does that make sense? So it just gives them only one thing to think about, and it's a yes or no, not, you know, A, B, or C.
Yeah, no, that's huge. Was there any part of the process that you struggled more with early on that you over, whether it was getting the financials, getting socials, coming up? Like, what was the biggest struggle you had early on?
I would say my biggest struggle would be probably collecting banking.
Really?
I think that's hard for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I didn't have a huge issue with it, but I have gotten to the point where I'm very over explaining to somebody when I'm going over like my credentials and who I am, and I do that right as I'm jumping into the application. A lot of people will do that right when they pick up the phone.
Yeah.
You know, like take down all this information. I have already built rapport with you, talked to you, got all your information, figured out what coverage you need, and then before I start asking you invasive questions, I give it to you right then and there, so it's fresh on your mind.
Got it. Okay. Talk to me about the rapport building a little bit on the phone, because again, I'm from a perspective in the house. I feel like it's easy. I can walk in, I see pictures of your kids. I go, oh, you have kids? Like, you know, they think like you're so insightful. I'm like, dude, I see the kids right there.
Right.
Y'all are at Disney World. Like, I'm not that smart.
Yeah.
You know, or you see a bumper sticker or something coming in. I don't know, they love the Patriots or whatever.
Yeah.
There's a lot of assistance when you're going into someone's home because it's their home. Whatever they like is going to be everywhere, right? On the phone, you don't see them. You don't know a whole lot. So what's been key for you to build rapport over the phone?
So I walk a very fine line with rapport building. I feel like if you build too much rapport, it makes people too comfortable.
Absolutely.
And they're almost more comfortable to tell you no, whereas I try to come in from like an educated financial professional standpoint. So I do not build rapport right at the beginning. I kind of jump right into it of like, this is why I'm calling you. This is what I do. You know, this is what I'm here for. What are we looking at? I kind of will start to almost like fit in rapport, like ask little questions like, how's your day going? You know, what are you going to do today? Just like small things, because you don't want to do too much because people will pick up on like
you don't want to be obvious.
Yeah, like you don't really care. You're just asking to fill time and space.
Yeah.
So I try to do it tastefully of like where I ask questions like throughout. I'm not sitting there like, you know, like right at the beginning, like, all right, like how's your day going? Like how's the weather down there? Like just things that they know you don't care.
Right.
So I try to build a rapport almost by just presenting myself in a good light of I'm the educated professional trying to help you and getting them to trust me based on I sound like I know what I'm talking about.
Right.
And then I kind of just use rapport building to fill in the gaps as
Throughout.
needed. Yes.
Which I mean, this is, you know, I talked about earlier, the similarities between what we did back in the day in the home and now, a lot of them are still there. Like I was always big on building rapport throughout.
Yeah.
Because I did in the beginning, I tried that. Like, here's my report time.
Yes.
Here's my application time. And you're right. They end up picking up on it.
Yeah.
Like I built a lot of my rapport while we're filling out the application.
Yes.
You know, and I feel like, to your point, it becomes more natural than it is just feeling like if I go, hey, grab me your driver's license, and maybe they're going to get it, and I'm filling the void with, you know, talking about their kids playing sports or something at that time. Then when they come back to the table, it's like back to business.
Yes.
I agree. I think for me, anyways, it always worked out better going, you know, doing it throughout the appointment versus time boxing it. Because then, I mean, most people, some won't, but a lot of people will pick up on it.
Yes.
You know, and then it becomes, you don't want it to feel like it's a sales process.
Yes.
You don't want it to feel like we're having a conversation. You obviously want life insurance, and I'm just the one that's going to help you get it.
Right.
You know, how long did it take for you to figure that out?
I would say, honestly, I probably knew that right from the start, just because, like I said, I did come from, you know, somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I mean,
so you had that part down.
Yes.
Yeah.
You figure that out very quickly of like who is here to have a conversation about this and who is here to, you know, do something else.
Yeah.
So I would say I feel like that's something you pick up on it pretty quickly as well.
Yeah. And, you know, to that point, we talked a lot about how to move that kind of in the middle pocket over, right? Now, real quick, we'll end with this. What about that group that we're talking about that they're just not going to buy, right? And I feel like everyone goes through this. I said it earlier, where they spend too much time with those individuals because they think they have a sale. And honestly, sometimes those people will lead you to believe a little, but and then I also believe, though, it's like we're ignoring red flags. Yeah. It's kind of like when, you know, you're starting to build a team, and you'll learn this when you recruit someone. There's going to be good agents, great agents, bad agents, right? But along the way, there's going to be red flags. The people that get stuck with bad agents and debt and all, I believe, I call it the honeymoon phase, right? When people first get married, everyone's perfect. Right. Oh, my God, my husband, my wife, they're just amazing. There's nothing wrong with them at all. And then, like, 3 years later, you're like, I hate when she does this and that, and this drives me over the – like, but all these red flags were there the whole time. You just chose to ignore them because you're in this honeymoon phase. And I feel like people do that with agents. They do that with client. Like, they see the red flags and they straight up block them out because they think, I'm going to get this person to buy a policy. Right. What for you anyway, what are some of these red flags? What are some of these signals where you know what, this one's going to be a waste of my time. They're not serious. I'm just going to move on to my next appointment.
I would say you pick up on that, or at least I pick up on that probably within 2 minutes of talking to someone. You get your first hint of how engaged they are in the conversation. But the biggest thing is them being argumentative. Like, I get a lot of people, or not a lot of people, but the people that are like that, they want to almost like sell you on why they don't need it. Right. And if you start to go into like well, I think this, and it's almost like, well, why am I here?
Yeah.
If you're going to tell me why you don't need it, like, it's just kind of like a bickering back and forth
Yes.
almost. And you can tell, like, if I need to convince you on these basic things up front, like, I can just tell it's not something that's going to make sense for you. And I think you need to kind of almost cut ties very early on, because it is going to take a lot of time out of your day to get you nowhere.
Yeah.
And just keep it professional in the sense of, well, here's my information. If you change your mind, or if, you have someone else who thinks this might be beneficial. I've picked up on it, and usually I will try to push through it just to see, because you do get those people sometimes. Like, if they have a change of heart, or they just like you as a person, or,
Right.
You did convince them, they, you change their perspective. So I don't just jump ship right away, but I also don't take time to push that person. And if I'm like, there's a 90% chance I'm walking out of here with nothing regardless.
Right. Is there, does it get to a point where you just flat out ask them, like, hey, listen, are you serious about this or not? Like, because I don't want to be, I don't want to be doing this the whole time.
Yeah. I will try to respectfully ask someone, like, you seem like you have a lot of apprehension, or a lot of things you don't agree with. Is there a reason why you filled this out in the first place? Like, what were you trying to accomplish if you don't feel like this was the right decision for you? So I'll ask them without being like, what's your issue?
Yeah. That doesn't lead anywhere.
But like, I just more so just asking questions.
Yeah. Got it. That makes sense. Well, I'll tell you this, Mara. I almost called you Marjorie. I know that's really your name, but you go by Mara, so sorry. You got your license when you were how old? 20?
20.
I want to say 23, 24. I was a lot more immature than you are at this age, because I would do things like crumple up the lead or go, hey, do me a favor, Mara. How about you never, ever fill one of these out again, because it's going to come to me, then I come back. But, and the reason I say that is, why you don't want to do that is because then you carry that on to your next appointment.
Right.
So I made that mistake early on. I'd be upset at you for filling out the form and not buying life insurance. Then I'd go meet with Naomi, and I'd bring it into that appointment. And I'm like, oh, shit, here we go. 5 appointments in a row I didn't help. But it's on me.
Right.
And to your point, like, who cares? There's so many more clients out there. And if you can have that perspective, and you go, what if I'm brand new, Mike, and I only have 2 appointments? Well, you should have more than 2 appointments, but there's plenty of other leads out there. There's plenty of other clients. So if we have that mentality of, and I'm not saying, leave every time it gets hard, because there are a lot of them you can push through. But when you realize that this individual is just being difficult to be difficult, right? Like, they have a counterpoint to everything you say. To your point, they're trying to sell you on why they don't need it. It's like, whoa, I'm really confused here.
Yeah.
Did I fill something out, or did you? Like, why am I here in the first place? And sometimes, something like that, they'll give them kind of a reality check, and, some of them will move, but most of them, you're going to learn really quick that if they're not into it, man, just move on to the next one.
They just have a problem that day, and they're not interested.
Absolutely. 100%. And hey, maybe you call them back in 2 weeks. I mean, I've done that before.
Yeah.
I've actually, there was, I always, mess with people about go backs, because when you first start, a lot of people go through this too, where they meet with a bunch of people, they come back, they didn't sell anything, but, and you'll hear this when you start training more agents, like, you don't understand, Mara, these 3 right here, I'm going back to see this guy next Tuesday, and this one said that he's starting a new job, and in 2 weeks he's going to do it, and you're like, no, stop. Just give those leads to someone else, let them call and call somebody else.
Right.
You don't have go backs. The only time I ever went back to an appointment was when the guy asked me to leave, and I left it all on the table, and it was not pretty. He called me back like 8 hours later. He's like, hey, man, I'm sorry. I was having a bad day. I do need the coverage.
Yeah.
Would you come back out tomorrow? I'm like, sure. And I get there, and he's kind of like laughing. It's like he didn't even let me in the house. We were on the porch. It was a disaster.
Yeah.
But I'm sure, to your point, he probably was just having a bad day.
Right.
And I said what I needed. Now, I was more mature at this point. I didn't lose that. But I said, I'm like, dude, like, you filled this out for life insurance. Obviously, you were looking into it for a reason. I don't know what's changed from now till then, but I explained to me, and he's, went back and blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to leave. You're not going to have any life insurance. Just hope you're okay with that, and maybe let your family know that you don't have it. So when you do pass, they know what they're not going to get.
Right.
And then he's like, I thought about what you said, and can you come back out? It's like, wow, I better go play the lottery today. But that's one time in the 5-6 years that I sold.
Yeah.
So the go backs they're not going to happen. You're better off just figuring it out on the spot. If it's not going to work, move on to the next appointment. And if you stack the deck in your favor, like you said, you have 15, 20 appointments a day.
Yeah.
That's also why it's much easier for you to go, oh, you're not serious? Okay, no problem. Have
Right.
a nice day. If anything changes, let me know.
Yeah.
And then you just call the next one. But if you don't have a next one, then it's easier to sit in that appointment for 2 hours and waste everybody's time.
Right.
You know. Well, I appreciate you coming in doing this, Mara. I
Yeah,
do.
of course.
And I know you're at 8 and change right now. You told me your goal is 1.2.
Yep.
A lot of families being helped, a lot of insurance being sold. I have no doubt that you'll get there. So it'll be interesting to see how this race is going to end up. So, Steve, Mara's saying she's coming for you, bro. But all jokes aside, I appreciate you doing this, guys. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned. Up next, we have our SRS segment. So enjoy the rest of our show on the Next Level Live, and we'll see you next week here with Inside the Sale.